Yet another tax-friendly country is threatening to cancel its tax incentives. Today, I'm going to tell you which European country it is, and I'm going to tell you the secret to making sure you never miss out on another tax incentive again. Recent news out of Italy suggests that country would like to cancel its what's called the lavoratori impatriati, which is a special tax regime not only for foreigners, but for Italians who have, in either case, lived outside of the country for more than 2 years, to be able to come and basically pay drastically lower tax rates. I'm going to tell you how it works, and I'm going to tell you a couple things that you might want to take away from this, whether you were interested in moving to Italy and taking advantage of lower taxes there or not. The first thing that stands out to me here is a lot of countries in Europe actually can be tax-friendly. You wouldn't think of Italy as a tax-friendly country. We've mentioned it in lists of tax-friendly countries before. Italians have piped up and said, oh, you're crazy, we don't have tax-friendliness. Understandable. If you live in Italy and you've just been paying your entire life the crazy high rates, it is not tax-friendly. But Italy has had a few different tax reduction regimes. In my opinion, the cleanest one is the one modeled after the Swiss lump sum tax, which is just you pay 100,000 euros, or if you're married and you want to include both spouses, 125,000 euros, and you structure your affairs properly. That's one amount, all you can eat, make all the money you want, do it somewhere else, and in a more flexible way than, let's say, Portugal's NHR program, which now they're talking about getting rid of. And so Italy was a great system for someone who says, you know, you make €1 million, you make 2 million euros, you make 10 million euros. I mean, your tax rate could easily be in the single digits because you're just committed to paying that 100 or that 125. For folks who didn't want to or couldn't afford to pay that, they had the regime which they're now talking about getting rid of. As of now, the lump sum is remaining, it appears. And so if you are that 7 or 8 figure earner that we work with, Italy still could be very attractive. And you can lock in a fixed rate of tax for as long as 15 years, so long as you haven't lived in Italy before. But this regime, which is available to more people, you could reduce your tax to 30% of the rates or 10% of the rates in the South. So 30% kind of north and central, 10% in the South. Basically take whatever the rate is and then just pay that tiny fraction of it. So you got like 90% and 70% discounts. And then after a while, it went down, but you were still getting like half off. And so you could spend like the next decade paying a fraction of Italy's normal tax rates. The only thing they said was you couldn't have lived there for the previous 2 tax years. And there were certain things about how you had to structure your income, which is why I think it wasn't quite as clean. Like if you're a very high earner, the lump sum was just easier in terms of how you could structure your business efficiently. You could do so in other countries, including, again, some countries that might have been on other European countries' blacklists. So there were some conditions for this. But you know, being able to live in Italy and pay 10% of the normal tax rates, I mean, you would be down in the single digits. If you want to live in a place like Milan or something, you would still be paying, you know, maybe in the low teens, for example. And so you had that ability to dramatically reduce your taxes depending on where in Italy you wanted to live. Italy is not the fastest passport to get in Europe. You do have to speak Italian, but after a decade of living there, in a very tax-efficient way, you could apply for citizenship. And so it was a nice kind of 1-2 punch for folks who like the Italian lifestyle. You know, I've spent time in Milan, I've spent time in Lake Como. It's not my first choice, but some beautiful areas in Italy, and a lot of people like the food, they like the culture, they like the language, but they didn't like the taxes. So they solved that. Well, now it appears Italy wants to unsolve that. So here are the proposals that the government is making for 2024 to reduce the exempted income from 70 and 90. So basically you only pay 10 or 30 cents on the euro of the normal tax, right? So if it was a 50% tax, you could pay as little as 5%, just as an example. They want to put that down to 50% across the board. That's kind of like the best case scenario, it seems. That, unless you just really wanted to live in the South or in Sardinia, would kind of eliminate these options. I would think more people would want to live in the North and live in Milan and take the train to Switzerland, what have you. To eliminate the possibility of extensions after the initial 5 years, even for those with children. To introduce an income limit of 600,000 euros, after which normal rates would apply. Perhaps they took that from Spain. And increase the number of years a regime participant must have resided abroad from 2 years to 3. So if you've never lived in Italy, the last one, who cares? Where you do care, okay, 50% across the board, presuming most people wanted to live in northern Italy, in a place like Milan, Lake Como, what have you, all right, I mean, it's going from 70 down to 50% reduction. So again, let's just say the tax rate is 45%. Now you're paying 22.5%. Assuming you don't have any tax obligations elsewhere, they're taken care of by a treaty, whatever. Okay, for some people, 22.5% is fine. But now you won't be able to live there for the 10 years required to get citizenship in a relatively tax-efficient manner. And if you make more than 600,000 euros, you're going to pay just the normal rates. So if you're making more than 600,000 euros, there's maybe a small gap where this would be a better deal than the 100,000 euro lump sum. Again, that appears to be untouched right now, which is actually not a bad thing, that they're actually preserving the one that's better for the higher income earners. But if you're just someone kind of in that, I make €1 million a year, I mean, you're really going to get stuck. I guess, again, you just go to the lump sum at $1 million. It's going to make more sense. And so people are basically saying, hey, why are we allowing people to pay this low tax? So I thought Italy, for all the problems that it had come to its senses in some sense and realized we need to bring some money into this place. Wages in Italy aren't as high as the average person, let's say, in the US might think. I mean, they have this great brand around the world that just isn't really matched in most cities on the ground in Italy. And so who knows what happens to this tax exemption in the future. Right now, it just seems like they're going to kind of defang it and possibly with the goal of just getting rid of it entirely. So the lump sum, again, for now is safe. The one for folks who don't earn as much money, maybe you earn a couple $100,000 and you just wanted to live and, pay $15,000 in tax and live in Italy and work towards citizenship, it just is not going to be as possible. Now, here's the secret that I promised to tell you at the beginning, is that people who are already in the system appear to be able to be grandfathered in. We typically see that with some of these exemptions. You were promised something, okay, we're going to honor those deals, but nobody knew. And so the answer always is, if you're on the fence about doing something, with Italy, if you go there for a year and then you don't like it and you want to go back for a year, but then you want to go back after that, obviously the number of years that you have to be out of Italy, that's going to be gone. So you get a one shot at this Italian, whether you do this one or whether you do the lump sum. So it's not one you want to kind of go back and forth. But if you think Italy's a place that you want to live, or if you're willing to give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, you just leave and you lowered your taxes for a year or two, then you want to get in early on this kind of deal. Because generally speaking, whether it's with tax incentives, whether it's with bank accounts, once the conditions change, the people who are in early can often be grandfathered in. Not always, but on a lot of these deals, you're in under the conditions you signed up for. And so because many of these conditions get worse over time, at least in some of the countries that you might be interested in, why not just commit to doing it now? We talk to so many people, they want to set up a plan B, which is a great idea. But I think sometimes the progression from your plan B to your plan A should be a little bit faster. You should have a little bit more confidence in yourself. You should say, I'm just going to take the plunge. And by the way, listen, if you just live in Italy for a year and you say, I hate it, you leave, you get to keep that tax exemption. You just can't go back. You reset the clock of how many years you have to be living outside of Italy for either program. But if you decide it's not for me and you're not going to go back, again, who cares? Potentially, this is going to be a much worse program in 2024. And going forward, maybe it just goes away. So why not get into this stuff early? What we help people, and we've had a lot more people doing this recently. They said, you know what? I want 3 extra passports and I want 3 residences to go with it. We kind of carve up the world into, chunks of each hemisphere and figure out, okay, how are we going to be as geographically dispersed no matter what happens with taxes, no matter what happens with wars, no matter what happens with geopolitics, no matter what happens with whatever you're concerned about, you're going to have a place to go. Citizenships and then potentially residences that lead to citizenship. And what I'm increasingly pushing people to do is go to one of those places and commit to at least see how you like it. And if you don't like it, you save some money on taxes for a while. You had an adventure. Maybe you found a new investment idea. Maybe you made a new friend. What I'm seeing is far too many people who are sitting in the sidelines thinking, hey, okay, one day I'll go to Italy, they have this great regime. Some of these deals don't last forever, but if you get in early, you can take advantage of it, all right? So get grandfathered in. The other key, of course, is how do I get my income up? How do I get my money up so that I can qualify? Because the prices for a lot of this stuff are going up. Good on Italy for, again, what seems like this lump sum deal. Pay us 100 or 125,000 euros, depending on your marital status, and we leave you alone. I like that deal better, but again, I mean, for it to work under the old conditions, I mean, we could run the exact numbers, but you're probably somewhere close to, €1 million in where it flips over. And so get the money up. If you're making, 600,000 to where you're right on the edge of like, oh, you're a nasty rich guy, just double it. And by the way, do you know how you double your income? You keep more of it and you reinvest that extra money you weren't paying in taxes back in your business. So you just jump in, you save more money, you get your income up, and as these programs become more and more expensive, you'll be heading in the right direction. The world is shifting towards, people who have money in terms of residence, citizenship, banking options. There's just too many wealthy people being generated in emerging economies, combined with European countries that decide that their moment of reason of saying let's bring some money in, politically speaking, no longer works for them. Those two factors mean you need to get the income up, so there's more programs that you qualify for. To where if you're not able to move to Italy now, and the program gets worse, have enough money to qualify for the lump sum. But let's just summarize. Things to take away from this. Number one, plenty of tax-friendly countries you never thought were tax-friendly. You might want to get grandfathered in on them because they may not have those policies forever. They're generally not going to be available forever. So let's say, 10, 11, 15 years, they may go away. But there's plenty of tax-friendly countries that you didn't even consider. And so before you just go to Dubai, or before you go to, some other tax-friendly, well-known tax-friendly place, talk to someone like Nomad Capitalist. Figure out all the options. We've helped people move to dozens of different countries, most of them tax-friendly, not all. But imagine with all these changes in the industry, who else can keep up with this? We're ramping up our R&D and strategy department. We're hiring more people than ever to cover more parts of the globe than ever because there's just so much stuff changing. You think some one-man shop is keeping up with all this stuff? It's hard enough for us here. And if you're just sitting at home and you just want to lower your taxes and you've just got a business, it's almost impossible to keep up with the constant changes as well as know all the different options. So go to nomadcapitalist.com, figure out how we can help you. There's lots of ways to lower your taxes. And again, lowering your taxes begets putting more money back into your business or back into your investments, making more money. You just kind of rinse and repeat, right? Rather than constantly losing money to reinvest because you're paying so much in taxes, get in on some of these programs. So be aware there's more options. Get grandfathered in. Get your dual citizenship from these programs if you can to give yourself more options in the future, because there will always be some country in Europe that's going to have a tax-friendly option. We've talked about them. There's non-dom programs. There's territorial programs. There's lump sum programs. There's tax exemptions, even in what you think are high-tax countries. But Italy looks like they're pulling back on their lower-end program. That's my recommendation on how to make sure that you're covered. And if you want some help, you go to nomadcapitalist.com.